Okay, so another important part of lighting is a shadow. So if you notice, these people have shadows, and we can look at the quality of their shadows here. They're very close, so this is a very diffuse yet directional lighting. So it's very tight on them, and it kind of fades away gradually, pretty quickly, actually. It's very soft elsewise. So right now, it just kind of looks like our penguins are floating because we don't have that ground of shadows. And so there's a lot of ways to make shadows in Photoshop. So I'm going to go ahead and grab this right here, make sure I'm on my penguins layer. Let's look at one thing. So if we go into effects, and there's something called the drop shadow. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that, and let's see if I can make this so it's not so big, right? You'll see that this drop shadow really is only good for something that's got the light coming from where we're looking at it. We can play with this a little more, and it's this effect, this live effect that we can play with, but it's likely not going to be useful to us in this situation. It can be useful in a lot of other situations, just not this one. So what we need to do is build a shadow underneath the penguins. Well, we could simply then just draw like a big manhole cover, basically, with our ellipse selection tool. Let's create a new layer, right? So the new layer palette, we know where that is. Let's make sure we have black selected in our foreground, and let's fill this in. And how do we fill this in? We can go to the paint bucket tool. There's a paint bucket tool, and just go ahead and fill that in. Deselect by hitting Command D, and put this back down. Just pull our layer underneath. Now it looks like they're falling through a manhole. So what can we do to make this look a little better? Well, we could, first of all, let's change it to multiply. Let's also, of course, my disk is almost full because I'm recording tons of videos. We could change the opacity, but the last thing we need to do is actually say filter. And so now we can make this softer, the shadow. So if we go to filter, blur, Gaussian blur will create for us, and we can see kind of a preview here. I could find it. My computer is struggling to record the video and do this. But notice on here, right, you see how I soften the edges by using that Gaussian blur. So there's that, and that still doesn't look super super convincing. Now we could layer this. So let's say because these fall off, see how the shadow is very soft right here, right? Maybe I could get away with this very light version of it. Maybe I'll just go to my eraser tool, and I'm going to make the eraser big, and I'm going to hold shift and go left bracket to make my eraser soft. Different brushes have different softnesses, and I'll go over this in a different video, but if you're following along, so I'm just going to kind of create some of that there. And then I might go ahead and take a brush tool, and same thing, I'm going to make it, where's my brush tool? I'm going to hold shift and use the left bracket, and I'll make it real soft, and I'll just kind of touch this where these guys touch the ground, right? And then I'll do the same thing. I might go in here and change its opacity. I might add some more Gaussian blur. You know, whatever gets it looking closer to real, right? Every situation's a little different. You know, I might have to go in and touch out with the eraser, just trying to get it to look kind of real. That's another way about going about this. Again, and why don't I just stop and talk about brushes in this video, and then we'll move on. So with any brush, such as the brush, the eraser tool, you'll notice, right, you have this, it's hard to see here, how about right here? You notice there's a size of our brush right here. Well, each one can have hardness or softness, and that hardness or softness determines on how hard or soft like the edges are. So right now, I'm going to hold shift and hit right bracket, and if I click that, you see it's the hardest it can be. Now if I hold shift and hit left bracket, you see how different when I click on this? So there's only 4 levels of hardness, softness, of course. That's not the only way to do that. So I'm going to turn off these layers and just give myself a new, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and just make the layer above it to show you what's happening. So what I want to do is I can just sample this, the shape of the penguins since they're knocked out. And now if I hold down Command and I click on this one, you know, we have still all the rest of that image there. So that's not useful. But if I hold Command, and that works on any layer that has transparency, I can also do this to the layer mask. So I held Command and I selected layer mask. Now I'm going to go back to my paint bucket tool and simply fill that there, deselect it. And so now what can I do with this to make it look more real? I'm going to go ahead and first of all make it behind my penguins. And then I can go, we've already seen this in the album art one, but we'll go to Edit Transform, we'll go to Free Transform, and I'll go ahead and, oh, I hate you, Photoshop, for how you've changed. I'm going to hold Shift to bring it down here. And what I'm going to do is right click while it's still in Transform to get these other tools out. And I think I'll take Skew. So I'll just go ahead and skew these guys like that. So you see that if the light was coming, see how the light's coming really kind of straight on. So this wouldn't be right for this one. But I'm just showing you different ways because you may, in your own Chimera project, find a different way. So maybe I'll go to Distort, kind of bring this like this. And now what do I want to do? I can do those same steps over, right? I'll go to Filter, Gaussian Blur. I'll just use the same settings. That's what I did there. I'll make sure it's multiply. I'll maybe take down the opacity. Maybe I'll go back to the eraser tool, right? Make it real big and soft and just kind of, you know, pull out some of the shadow. I don't like how I did there. Right, but again, all these things that you could do here to help create a shadow. Another fancy thing that you could have done is create another layer mask on this. So I'm going to add a layer mask to this. And now I'm going to go to the gradient tool. And with this gradient tool, right, going black to white, I'll just go ahead and paint that across. That's not the right direction, so I'll change directions. And I'll actually just kind of go right here. So what I'm trying to do is actually soften it right there. Oh, I guess I'm in this mode. Let's go in that mode, right? And so what I'm trying to do is keep it darker here and lighter there, just kind of like these are, then play with the opacity. Again, it's all just a game of millimeters, right? Where you're continually, you know, kind of crafting and shaping it so that it looks realistic. That's really the end goal to this whole thing. Maybe you want to go ahead and you know, fix it up some more this way. Remember that holding Shift is the only way to make things change from their aspect ratio. So that's a lot in this one video just about making shadows, but that's a bunch of different ways you can go about it.